Welcome to This Is Jen. If you forget why you subscribe to this podcast and who I am, that happens to me. Do you ever do that, Shady? This is Shady. Shady Ray, our wonderful producer. Do you ever subscribe to a podcast and then a new episode pops up and you're like, who is this? On my feed? Yeah. Yes, okay, so I have 6 kids. What the salient things that people seem to remember about me. I have 6 kids. I am a stand-up comic. I have a comedy special that came out recently. I was raised atheist, and now I'm Catholic. And that's all anyone knows or cares about. I mean, truly, that is, for your purposes, that is the sum total of my existence. So that's me. That's probably why you subscribe, for one of those reasons. And so this podcast is where we take a look at what is going on in our lives and the world, and I try to offer fresh takes through my lens as a mom of 6, atheistic Catholic convert stand-up comic. So we have a fantastic episode for you today. So much stuff to get to. I might, if I can get to this topic, I might end up taking back everything I said in the previous episode. I was telling you guys, I did a whole thing about TikTok. If you missed my segment in episode 54 about sea shanty TikTok, look, I was on fire. I've rarely been as enchanted with anything as I am with sea shanty TikTok. So I was telling you guys, be curious. Like when there's a new app out there, you should be curious about it. I was wrong. I take all that back. So we might get to that. But today is a big day. We're going to hit a bunch of other topics, but I want to start by pointing out I am wearing a pointy red hat that's getting cut off because I couldn't set up the shot for it to be in it. So tell you what, I'm going to be, for those of you watching on YouTube, I'm just going to be I'm going to do like Quasimodo pose here so that you can see that I have a pointy red hat on. I feel like this is good. Actually, I should have written congratulations, Hallie, on it. So right here, live on the show, I'll do that while I tell you what's going on. Today is the release of Hallie Lord's book. Just congrats.
I was going to say, that's a long word.
Yeah. And congrats. I'm writing here in Sharpie. Congrats, Hallie. It's called Falling Home. And this book is so like, as she was writing it, she was like, should I be that honest about things not working out in life, about, not always just having the picture perfect cookie cutter life? And I was like, well, why don't you try it? Just be really raw and honest about what has happened in your life and the way things have gone. So you have to go buy Falling Home, because I told her, I said, I think there's a market for people not fitting, because she's in the Catholic world too. I'm still talking to the same people who don't know why they subscribe to this podcast. So I have a friend named Hallie Lord, Hallie. You can look her up. So she has a book that came out called Falling Home. And I told her to be very real and honest and raw. And like, even if it doesn't fit the perfect cookie cutter message. So now you have to buy her book, because if she doesn't sell copies of this book, it will be entirely
your fault.
My fault. Now, I didn't tell her that I was going to do this. So Hallie Lord supervises the post-production of this podcast. And I love putting people on the spot. I think it's so much fun to just see what they come up with when they're unprepared. So this will be a big surprise to her when she looks at this video in post, because I do the recording and I send it to her to supervise all the editing stuff. And so surprise, Hallie. So what I'm going to do is I am going to give Hallie a few seconds here to answer the question, what permission does your book give my listener? Everyone knows I have a theory that all great books, the reason we love them, especially nonfiction, like if it's memoir, something about my life, or a how-to book, it's ultimately because it gives us some kind of permission. It says that it's okay to do something. And that was big when my last book came out. The big permission I was giving people is to say, you can discover your passions and follow them and actually really go for it in a big way, even if you are a mom of young children. That was the permission slip that came with my book. So Hallie, she'll be adding this in post. So as we're recording this, Shady and I will not be hearing what Hallie says. Hallie, you can do video or audio. If she does not have makeup on today, You will see in this screen, for those of you watching on YouTube, just a photo of her, like a headshot with audio. But if she's looking hot and has makeup on, maybe she will treat us to like a selfie
her
video.
face.
She's a very good looking woman. So we will be quiet. Shady and I will be quiet for a few minutes to give Hallie space to add this in post-production. But Shady, every few seconds, you and I should be like, wow. Just to, hype her up, even though she's adding this in post. So I will get out my timer. Give her a few seconds here. Okay, so here, Hallie Lord, you have a new book out called Falling Home. What permission does it give my listeners when they run in droves to buy this book? What is the permission slip that implicitly comes with this book? Go.
Okay. I am about to try to answer this question seriously, even though I've seen the footage and I know the faces that Jen is about to make. The permission that my book gives you is to trust your intuition. You can trust yourself.
What? Oh, that's amazing.
Even if it looks different than you had expected, even if it looks different than the path everyone else is on, even if everyone tells you you're crazy. You can trust yourself to recognize the areas within you that are in need of love and healing and metamorphosis. And you can trust yourself to know how to find those things and obtain them. So in a nutshell, that is the permission my book gives. You can trust yourself. You can trust your intuition. You are trustworthy.
Now, you know what is a related subject to Hallie's book coming out? I have a feeling for those of you who follow me casually, you might recognize the name Hallie, but you might think, okay, no, wait, I remember something from that. So this past summer, my most popular Instagram stories were when I took to Instagram and was threatening to fight people who had looked up Hallie's private info and posted it on the internet. So here I'm going to show Shady some of these stories here. So this was me. I was threatening because some people, they looked up Hallie's private info, and then there were these forums that were talking about her. They were posting court documents and things like that. So I was explaining this story on Instagram, and see, I used the term throwing hands, which I think was great.
Yeah.
I think, because I think that's a very organic thing for me to say, that I would be throwing hands. So I threatened to throw hands with the people who were doing this to her. And what I said is like, you can stalk me. Like, people do that a lot. And, as long as you don't show up with a knife or something, I'm very sympathetic to stalking. But that's right. So my threat to them was that I'm a really good stalker. So, like, you post my friend's information online, I will find out where you live. Yeah. This goes both ways. Like, you post her court records online, well, that maybe some things of yours end up getting posted online. So, and these stories got really great because I actually pulled up martial arts YouTube and live on Instagram was watching videos about how to fight, because I figured if I'm going to threaten to fight these people, I should know something about it, because I've never been, I haven't been involved in a lot of fisticuffs, but I am a big believer that you can learn anything. And so this is to refresh your memory for those of you who know, this is my friend Hallie. This is the one that I was threatening to fight the people who were looking up her info and posting it. So this is related to her book. And let's all buy Falling Home to spite the bad people. Because the reason that they were doing this is she had opened up about the fact that her marriage was becoming a difficult situation, and it like she wasn't having a cookie cutter fairy tale ending there. And she said, you know what, I can take off my little pointy hat, I think, because now we're talking about marriages falling apart and we're getting real, so it's time to take off the pointy party hat that does, I know, say congratulations, Hallie. So she just said, look, like, I'm just, I'm being honest about my experience, and this is what she did in the book too. And people really didn't like that. I was very surprised at some of the reactions she got, both publicly and in private. And So here's the thing. What this reminds me of, and unfortunately, I think she's headed for more of this with her book, because her book, it doesn't present cookie cutter stories of what a Catholic family looks like, of what a Catholic woman looks like. And I am concerned about the reaction that she's going to get based on when she first started bringing up these subjects on Instagram, and I was having to fight people. I might, now that her book is, it's out with Nelson. I mean, this is like the publisher everyone wants to work with but me, because I'm with Zondervan and I would never want to work with anyone but them. Nelson is like the hottest publisher except for Zondervan. They are amazing. They're a HarperCollins imprint. They're fantastic. So is Zondervan. Again, we're not comparing. Look, there's enough, the pot is big enough for all of us. So Nelson's amazing. So she's with Nelson. You know, they're obviously very excited about the release of this book. I'm worried about all the people I'm going to have to fight now. And this brings us to the first thing I wanted to talk about today. I've said in some of my talks, one of my favorite quotes is from this friend of mine, Marian Fernandez Cueto, amazing woman. She's Catholic. She grew up in a group that they're very similar to the Amish. Like, they wore the Amish type outfits, and they use some technology, but not a lot. And interesting. Okay, this is an aside, but this is really worth going into. I think they're called the Bruderhof or something like that. So they actually staffed a private jet company because they were sort of Amish. Their people didn't know what the celebrities were. So like, you would have, you know, these Amish stewardesses serving a plane where, like, Jerry Seinfeld was on it, but she's never heard of Jerry Seinfeld because she comes from this community. So anyway, Marian Fernandez Cueto, she's fascinating, and she's a speaker and a writer. And so she had this quote where she was talking about how she sought out this really tough guy spiritual director, like a priest who's like known for, like, he's a crusty dude. He's not going to give you a pass on anything. It's not like, hey man, you do you. It's like, YOLO, you do you. If you take the exact opposite of that vibe, that's this priest, because she's, you know, she's going to take this seriously. Like, if you're coming from the Amish world, you know, you don't want these namby-pamby Catholics, you know, who are like, let's live our lives. Like, you're like, no, I want suffering. I want, you know, I want difficulty. So she sought out this priest who is, and by the way, I'm totally on that part putting words in her mouth, but here's the quote that I wrote down from this talk she gave. And she was talking about, you know, maybe getting a job, but she had young children. So, and in the circles that she was in and that I was in the Catholic world, there are people who would be like, you have young children and you're, you know, thinking of seeking employment? Oh, well, enjoy hell. Enjoy burning in hell for all eternity. We all knew people like that. So she was asking this confessor and the spiritual director about it. And here's his quote. I'm doing this from memory because I just love it so much. I've memorized this. He said, Marian, the church, and by the way, for those of you who aren't Catholic, this can apply to, I think, really any belief system, but it definitely applies to Catholicism. He says, the church should be the greatest possible experience of true freedom. The church is very clear about what constitutes sin, and that is failure to love. That's all, like, when we talk about quote unquote sin in Christianity, that's all it is a failure to love. That's all it is. So he said that the church is very clear about what constitutes sin, but the positive side, it leaves wide open. And isn't that an interesting way to think about faith and religion and God and, you know, anyone who follows Jesus in any way? That, you know, notice that Jesus said, love one another, and our religions, they do give us a list of the don'ts. You know, thou shalt not, like 10 commandments, thou shalt not. Christianity gets a hard time for this. I used to be one of the people giving Christianity a hard time for this. Like, oh, you guys, you want to live your lives. Like, that's ridiculous. You just have these lists of what you can't do. But what I thought of, what eventually occurred to me, and that this priest pointed out, is a thou shalt not list is finite. It's just like 10 commandments, 10 things. You know, the catechism, Catholic beliefs. Okay, that's like 1,000 things you're not supposed to do. But hey, 1,000 is smaller than infinity. And so the idea here is that there is, yes, that we do have, through our faith, some lists of like, yeah, don't do that, because that, I know it seems like that's fine, but really trust us, like that is not, you are not going to end up with a life filled with love if you get into this. We're just telling you, trust us. So that's what our religion does. But notice that because it doesn't give us a list of what to do, it's wide open. It's wide open. And what I see, and this is among all Christian faiths, is you have these subsets of people who add a lot of rules onto their lives, that really don't need to be there. And they get themselves very convinced, like they could pass a lie detector test, so convinced that this is their religion. Like when I first converted to Catholicism, I fell in with some rogue bloggers who had these ideas, like when you have a baby, if you do not co-sleep with your baby, if you do not breastfeed that baby until they are 14 years old and co-sleep with them until that point as well, if you do not carry your baby in a sling 24/7, you hate God, you hate your children, you're not taking motherhood seriously. You think I'm kidding? Back in that, this is how crazy some people are. There was a big debate that blew up because people were saying that they thought that manger scenes, the cornerstone of Christianity, that manger scenes were deplorable because Mary was not, like, didn't have the baby Jesus in a sling. She put him down. I wasted time out of my life that I can never get back being in those circles, getting involved in these debates. And what I eventually came to see is I think I have a little bit of OCD. I think I have a touch of obsessive compulsive disorder. I think I also have some self-sabotaging tendencies where when I feel God calling me, when I just feel moved that it's time for me to go to the next level in my life and to make positive changes, I get very scared, especially if it involves any kind of social risk. If it involves anything that the people around me might ruffle feathers, it might be something different. Actually, on my Patreon, I told you guys my whole story of getting the alcohol thing under control. I had to go 6 months not having a single drop of alcohol. And that was a whole thing that took, it took a very long time, more than a year, to really, get that situation under control. But that was a scary thing for me because at that time, alcohol was it was part and parcel of so many of my social interactions. I was terrified. I was really scared of how people would react. Would I still have the same social circles? Would what would Joe and I do to celebrate big occasions? So I had a lot of fears. And that's just one example of the types of situations where I end up creating a bunch of problems in my life to agonize about, to keep me from focusing on the real problems that I don't want to think about. And this is a new major revelation for me. This is why I love having a podcast, so I can tell you guys stuff like this when it's going on. This has been a massive epiphany for me in the recent years, that sometimes I will be so wound up about like the rules that I'm supposed to be following, and then is this like, am I sinning, and like all this, and I get so stressed out, and I look back and realize this was self-sabotage, and this was me avoiding the real things, the deeper things, the darker things, the more challenging things that I'm trying not to think about. Like with the alcohol thing, that I had some movements for a few months that like maybe this had gotten pretty out of balance in my life. I mean, I wasn't like, waking up in the gutter or anything. It wasn't, wasn't impacting my marriage.
Sounds interesting.
I wasn't going to get fired from my job. I mean, it wasn't right. Yeah, that might have actually, been interesting. Yeah, actually, so by the way, okay, I'll give you guys a preview. I'm working out a stand-up comedy set where, as I have a bit where I talk about this phase, and I was like, yeah, the thing is, I can't trust myself with with how I determine what is technically alcoholism, because like it would start like, well, you're only an alcoholic if you drink during the day, and then that would transition to, well, you're only a true alcoholic if you drink before noon London time, and somehow that becomes you're only an alcoholic if you take a shot of rye whiskey before you even hit the snooze button, and I'm not doing that, so obviously, I don't have a problem. And then it gets to the point, like I hear a story of a guy who woke up naked, face down in the street, clutching a bottle of vodka. And I'm like, that guy's an alcoholic because when I do that, I am fully clothed.
Yeah,
so, right. Definitely. So I do not have a problem. So I'm working out that bit. You guys will see that whenever it is that I go back out on tour, you'll probably hear me talking about that. So because I was trying to avoid all of that. At that time, I got myself all wound up about these supposed problems. I brought my faith into it. I was like, God is angry at me and I'm just not doing this perfectly within Catholicism. I was making stuff up. I will be just completely honest. I was making stuff up because I didn't want to go into a darker place. Like the fact that maybe alcohol had gotten really out of control in my life. So all that is to say, and again, that's why we have a Patreon, is because I don't want all the details of my alcohol story out there for anyone to Google. I don't want it on YouTube. Patreon.com/thisisjen. That's what I do over there, is go into stuff like that. And that was episode, let's see if I can pull this up for you, because I know at least a couple people are going to be like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Let me see if I can find what episode that is. Okay, I found it. That is episode 5 of my Patreon. When you join, you get access to the full archives. Episode 5 on Patreon is that whole story. The point is, I had some things that I didn't want to think about. So I made up all of these issues to distract myself from what was really going on. And I see people do this all the time with their religion. They take their in issues, they take OCD tendencies, they take their own inner tendencies, and then they put it on their religion. Because that's the best way to self-sabotage. Because if you're sitting there and it's just coming from you saying, hey, no, don't, it isn't time to revamp, I don't know, whatever. What do people do to improve themselves? To revamp the way you eat or to exercise. I'd never do any of that, but other ways, or, maybe, I don't like, maybe someone has a really difficult relationship with their parents and they're like, God is trying to call them to say, you know what, it's time to end this acrimony. It's time to end this. And they're like, I don't want to hear that. I'm going to go do something to self-sabotage. But the brilliant thing is that if you bring your religion into it, then you're like, no, it's God. God is telling me that I'm this big sinner and I have to work on all this stuff and I have to, just flog myself about it 24/7. So there's no time to think or pray about what's going on between me and mama because I'm too busy obsessing about all of these sins that I'm supposedly committing, like not carrying my baby around for 15 hours a day. You see it all the time. It's a big issue. So I actually made an image. I almost posted this on social media because I was talking about something that I did. I didn't post it, but Shady, are you familiar with the meme of the guy in the butterfly? Yeah, and listeners, you'll know this when you see it. It's from anime. Mm-hmm. So it's a guy looking up at a butterfly.
Yes.
So the butterfly is some incorrect thing, and then the text at the bottom, like the caption, is him saying, "Is this, whatever." Like when I famously misconfused the White House, when I confused the White House and the Capitol building back when I was in D.C., people were posting pictures. It would be like Jen, my name, over the guy. The butterfly was, like a random, it would just say rock or something on it. And then at the bottom, it would be like, is this the White House? And they scratch over the text to put the White House or whatever. So those of you watching on YouTube will be able to see this. Shady, I'll show you here, but it's basically for the butterfly, I put my OCD, and then at the bottom I have the guy saying, is this Catholicism? Because I see this all the time. So, okay, well, I had another one. All right, I wasn't going to show you guys this, but I had another one too that this was a little inside joke. So there's certain people on Twitter, certain gentlemen who have ideas about what Christian women should do.
Huh.
Yeah. And it's really clear that they have what psychoanalysts would call a fetish. And, they're kind of revealing more about
themselves.
You can kind of guess what's in their Google search history on the incognito tab. I think I can kind of tell you what they've been searching for. And so, but they go on Twitter and they're, real Christian women do this. So I almost replied to a certain gentleman on Catholic Twitter with this image. We'll have Hallie add it in post.
Oh my goodness.
So the butterfly is, PG-13 content warning. Skip this part if you have kids in the car. So the butterfly is my fetish. And the guy is saying, is this Catholicism? That describes certain people from that world. So for all of my listeners who are people of faith, I cannot emphasize enough that you occasionally do a gut check and make sure that you are not adding rules onto yourself that your religion does not require of you. Per that great priest, what he said to Marian Fernandez Cueto, the church is very clear about what constitutes sin, and the rest it leaves wide open. Make sure that you are living in that wide open freedom. G.K. Chesterton described the rules of traditional Christianity as the walls of a playground. Imagine if you had kids playing on a playground that was next to a superhighway. Well, that wouldn't really be a fun place to play. If there's no wall there, that's not fun because you constantly have to worry, what if I get carried away on the slide or on the monkey bars or whatever and I start running and then I end up tripping into the superhighway? That would be the most boring, terrible playground to go to in the world. But now imagine it had a very safe wall around it. Well, you can go crazy, like my kids. Shady knows my kids very well. My kids are maniacs, right?
Yes,
I mean,
definitely.
they're like animals let out of a cage when you get them to that playground because there are walls around it, so to speak. It's a safe space. It's not easy to get out into the street or into any dangerous area. So if you had a playground, imagine it's like surrounded by a pit of lava. Well, that's not a fun place to play. And that's exactly what Chesterton was saying about the world today. Let's face it, the world is a pit of lava, especially with the way things are going these days. I mean, come on, like any insanity that you want to get into can be justified. Like it's my thing to run a meth lab. That's just how I express myself. And I like to smoke crack cocaine while I'm running my meth lab. You will find people in the world today who are like, in Portland, you'll find people who are like, you do you. That's valid. That's a lifestyle. I'm not going to judge your alternative lifestyle. That is a lava pit. It is so easy to go off the rails and unintentionally ruin your life these days. And so your religion, especially if it's Catholicism, gives you and by the way, Shady's not Catholic. I welcome people of all nations and all creeds to this podcast. I'm just a Catholic snob. I can't help it. See, look, you guys know. This studio is so disorganized. I'm just trying to put on my hat. So I'm queen of the weird Catholics. I'm a Catholic snob. I can't help it. Especially if your religion... Oh, wait, I have water spilling. Especially if your religion is Catholicism, think of its rules as the walls of a playground. Don't put up a bunch of extra walls that aren't there because then you're ruining your stupid playground. But respect the walls that are there. And then go crazy, be wild within the playground. And that's all Hallie Lord is trying to do. She's just trying to get her freak on within the playground. And everyone's hating on her for it. But she's staying within the playground of Orthodox Christianity. And by the way, if Thomas Nelson, publisher, would like to use that as a quote, I am willing to have that on the cover of the paperback edition. Hallie is just trying to get her freak on in the playground. Dash Jen Fulweiler, best-selling author and podcast
Can't
host.
the woman just get her freak on?
She just wants to get her freak... No, in the playground.
In the playground.
Hallie Lord wants to get her freak on in a playground. And all of these people who are using their own obsessive-compulsive disorder to make the religion of Catholicism something it's not they just sit around in these forums and they hate on her. And, we can get past that. I mean, again, I'll make time out of my schedule to show up at their houses and threaten them and throw hands. I will engage in fisticuffs. I'm not afraid. I will, and look, because I'll learn, I will learn. I will watch YouTube videos. So, we don't need to worry about them. And I say again, Jesus never told us not to have enemies. He just said to love them. Where did Jesus don't have enemies? No, we have plenty of enemies. Hallie and I have a lot of enemies, but we try to love them. And I think the best way I can love them, smack them around a little bit.
Hate us.
So, yeah, right. So I'm not bringing this up to hate on those people. I'm bringing this up because I think that we all do this sometimes. And especially if you're any kind of fan of mine, you have some issues because I'm crazy. So if you are attracted to me as someone whose podcast you'd like to listen to and you're like, I'd like more of her content, more where that came from, please. That is
another round.
Yeah, that you have some issues, and they probably have to do with OCD, just be obsessive compulsive tendencies, probably a little bit of anxiety and depression, and just being a little bit kind of overly analytical, petty. That's what I wasn't even going to say that. Shady's like, let's list them off, vengeful. What's interesting is that Shady, my fans tend to be really good people. They are actually not petty and vengeful like I am, but they are, because I've met many of you, and so I say this with love, and I say this as a sister. I have a lot of fans who are pretty OCD and way more analytical than they should be. I like a lot of women who work in the sciences, who are attorneys, who are, doctors, engineers, stuff like that. Those are my women. A lot of them follow me. So if you are also Catholic, you need to be very, very careful that you're not putting rules on yourself that don't need to be there. And so what I'm trying to say here is buy Hallie Lord's book. By Falling Home. But there really is a point about honestly, probably the biggest realization I've had in the past couple years is realizing how I was misusing my religion as a form of self-sabotage. So that is my very serious message for you today. If you are Catholic or of any kind of faith, make sure you're not doing that. And if you are doing that, at least don't hate on Hallie Lord, because she's just getting her freak on in the playground. Falling Home is the new book. Okay, one more topic before we draw this fine episode of excellence to a close. By the way, on Patreon this week, we're about to put that episode together. I'm having Joe come on to help you feel smart about the stock market. Joe is one of those guys, he's in that world. His friends from Yale worked at iBanks and stuff, so he knows all the terms. And I know none of that. So I'm going to interview him for Patreon. Not that anyone actually cares about the stock market, but how to just sound smart if you end up in one of these conversations. Yeah. Patreon.com/thisisjen. Last week, at last episode, I was saying that sea shanty TikTok is incredible. It's just absolutely amazing. And I was talking about TikTok and saying we need to react with curiosity to what the new technology is, to what the new apps are. We need to react with curiosity because it's so easy to reject them because we don't understand them or whatever. I was trying to convince you guys to get on TikTok. So now there is yet another app. I want to call this now. You can drop this to your friends. You'll sound like you're on the cutting edge of things. Clubhouse is evidently about to be the new hot thing. That's what everyone's saying. Have you heard of Clubhouse?
No.
Okay. See, all of the celebrities of certain, the intelligentsia celebrities are all talking about this. So Elon Musk, Tim Dillon, who else? Bridget Phetasy, and they're cool and they're cutting edge and they know about things. And so a lot of people like it. And it's funny, I took to TikTok like a duck to water. I understood that app so instantaneously. I was like, these are my people. Not that, I don't do the dances or anything, but I see why the app is so popular. I totally understand it. So I was telling you guys, you should be more curious. So this app Clubhouse. It's invite only, but you know, your friend Jen gets the invites, you know? So I'm on this app and it's, okay, so it's like, can I just play this? I don't know if this is private. I don't know if you're not supposed to talk about this publicly. So it's it's live audio of people talking to each other. So it's like you are in the FBI wiretapping people's phones. That's what it sounds like. Can I just play this? I hope this isn't private. See, this is what keeps us off of this app, of apps like this, that like, I don't know if this is private or not. I don't know what's happening. So listen, people are just talking to each other. This is a Clubhouse room called Strategy 101. She's welcoming someone named Tony. Oh, okay. So now, see, okay. Here's for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see the interface. I hope this isn't something I'm not supposed to share. Okay. See, there's a button here that says "Leave quietly." Oh wait, can they hear me? Oh wait, they literally. Hang on. I think they. I think they might be able to hear. Because like I didn't hit the quietly button. Okay. I am sorry to the Strategy 101 people. If I am really sorry if that was on. I think I just joined their conversation.
I can't take you anywhere.
I know, right?
I can't even.
This is where Shady's like, my name is Amanda Anderson. Please refer to me that way from now on. I do not know this woman. I'm like, this app is trash. Like, as they're like, and then I dropped the names of like Tim Dillon, Dillon. Like, well, one of the podcasts I love, I'm like obsessed with Bridget Fetisi, and I'm like, Phet. Let's see if I can, like, you know, get on her bad side with like, oh my gosh.
Oh no.
Okay, so, well.
You're like, I gotta go.
Yeah, sorry guys, gotta get back to the podcast. So I bet at some point I said my own name. Like, so I am Jen full what? F-U-L.
Invite only.
Okay. Well, what a good note to end on.
I'm so sorry.
What an excellent note to end on. Don't try new apps. Don't be curious. I take back everything I said. Get on TikTok because it's much easier to understand. Just do. Shady's still laughing.
It's so hard not to.
Look, just stick with, because you know what it is? This isn't my fault. No, this app is supposed to be for smart people to talk about the big issues. And I try to get involved on one of those apps. And then I end up like, now no one's ever going to speak to me again. If I had just stuck with TikTok and like done my little dances, that's evidently my level. I need to be with the 14-year-olds on TikTok. So Clubhouse has a reputation. It's a lot of the billionaire, like hedge fund guys and tech guys are on there. Like Elon Musk is on there all the time. I mean, major people who are doing things behind the scenes in our country are on this app and spending a lot of time on there. And they're revealing their secrets for like how things work. And so clearly I can't be on apps like that. I need to go back to TikTok with the 14-year-olds and just leave Clubhouse for the adults. Mm-hmm. Don't try new apps. Don't be curious. Stick with whatever. Just stick with your routine. I should take back everything I said on the whole podcast. Use your religion to hold yourself back. Tell yourself that God is against Clubhouse and TikTok. Probably Instagram too. So we certainly know God is against Facebook and Twitter. So just, you know what? Put some extra rules on yourself that God never asked you to put on there so that you don't end up
but still buy
like
Hallie's
me.
book.
Yeah, right. But by falling home, creating a life that catches you when you fall out now, wherever fine books are sold. Okay, I should end this podcast before I further alienate myself from gracious society. Shady Ray, Amanda Anderson, thank you very much for joining us. Hallie Lord, congratulations on your new book. What an amazing promo this is. I do give your publisher, Thomas Nelson, a HarperCollins imprint, and HarperCollins and all of its subsidiaries do have the right to use my quote about you getting your freak on in the playground. You're welcome to use that for any publicity purposes. And patreon.com/thisisjen is where you get all my kind of behind the scenes, what I do to make things work and not work, and what's really going on with me. And when you join, you have access to the full archives. And I will be back next week with episode 56, assuming, unless I just get deplatformed by the Clubhouse people who I've just alienated, here on This Is Jen.